Hello everyone and welcome to the Climate Exchange. My name is Kumsa Masizana, your host for today. Our guest for today is none other than Mr. Mnikeli Ndabambi, the acting CEO of the South African Weather Service. So his career is quite reputable and it tracks back to 35 years ago when he started off at the South African Weather Service as an observer in 1985 at the Bishop Weather Office. So he worked his way up to being a forecaster in the Port Elizabeth office in the Eastern Cape. Many years later, he moved to Pretoria where he became a meteorological trainer, moved his way up to being the manager of forecasting, the senior manager of forecasting, and now currently holds an executive position at the South African Weather Service. As we speak, he is currently the acting CEO of the South African Weather Service, and we are really happy to have him with us today.
A very, very good day to you, Mr. Mnikeli Ndabambi, and thank you very much for agreeing to sit down and talk to me.
Good morning, Kumsa, and also I'm greeting to everyone that is listening now.
So first things first, before we get to the technical and the scientific parts of meteorology, let's start with where you are from and how you actually came across meteorology, because I can imagine that comparing to now, back then it was quite difficult to kind of get to know these kind of courses. I'm sure they were quite scarce at the time. I think because of social media, we are getting exposed now to meteorology, but back then it must have been difficult to get your hands on this kind of information.
Yes. Where I'm coming from, I was born in a small town in the Eastern Cape called Stofimvaba, but I also spent a lot of time in King Longstown. Some people, they thought that I was born from that side. Meteorology, it was unknown to me, to be honest, Kumsa. So I was planning to study mechanical engineering after schooling in St. John's College in Tata. But then when I went to Ndabambi, while I was there, I received a letter. My sponsor dropped me. I think they accepted me by mistake. I was not so surprised because the forms were in Afrikaans anyway. So then after the Ndabambi, I saw on the newspaper the advert on meteorology, and the requirements were maths and physical science, which I happen to like. So that's how I came to see meteorology. Then I looked at the dictionary, and then I got the explanation. Then I applied, hence I started.
Okay, so I can imagine back then in the 80s, there weren't too many Black meteorologists that were actually enrolling it. So how did they actually bring in, from you, all of you being observers, moving you to forecasters? How was that transition from being an observer to a forecaster?
Yeah, actually, we were among the group that at that time, as you know, it was still at the apartheid time. So they were testing if Blacks can pass this course. So, and then there was also a comment, I'm not going to mention people in one of the institutions, that if we don't pass, they are not going to admit any Blacks. But fortunately, most of us did pass. But it was not really many of us. We were less than 10 people. So then I started the Weather Observer, as you indicated. So you would do 6 months course at a time. But now our career pathing has changed. So that would make you to qualify to go to institution of higher learning. And then I qualified. I think at the time I was among the 4 that qualified. So we studied for 4 years. And then the master's, I did it while I was working full time. I think I've answered you.
Yes, you did very well. So for people who are watching and they don't understand the difference between an observer, can you please just give us a difference between those two?
Okay, I lost you a bit. Difference between what and an observer?
An observer and a forecaster.
Okay, an observer, which we call now a meteorological technician. So in the beginning, they were taking readings in the mornings. For example, take your 24-hour readings, and then you look at your weather charts. Some would be for pressure, for example, analyze those. and then collect the data from different weather stations, plot them by hand on the charts. The speed was very, very important for plotting, as it is important for typewriters. So then these days, the plotting is done by the computers. So you would also have that working relationship with a forecaster so that you can update the forecaster on the weather observations. Yet the numerical weather prediction models that time were as good as predicting for tomorrow, not beyond. So observations were actually very, very important. And then when you go to as a forecaster, so it's where now you predict weather starting from today and go to tomorrow, and then also an outlook, what is called a medium range forecasting, which goes up to 7 days. These days we even have a 14 2 weeks forecasting. So the forecaster actually analyzes that data that the observer has taken because that is his or her first point of departure before looking at the weather numerical weather prediction model so that he or she can confirm whether these models are on track when you look at the current observations. Then the predictions will go on. So some of the observations are remote sensing, which is satellite. Some you've got your weather radars, which we didn't have at the time. Now we even have a lightning detection network, which we didn't have at the time.
Yes, yes. And that was going to be my follow-up question. Since you have been fortunate enough to move all the way from being an observer up to senior manager in forecasting, I'm sure you've seen how forecasting has evolved over the years. What would you say are the good things that have come into forecasting in the last 30 to 35 years that you have been in forecasting?
Yes. Even the role of a National Meteorological Service have evolved globally. So what I've seen a forecaster moving from just preparing a forecaster, waiting for radio stations to phone and broadcast the forecaster, and then go back and sit on the desk waiting for aviation calls from their pilots to give them the briefing, but to also concentrate on the users of the information. For example, if you see the forecasters of today, they are a bit multi-skilled. So the communication skills, which we're also trying to enhance, and also the understanding of other sectors we are servicing. In the beginning, we're just disseminating information. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's usable or not. But now there's a move to understand the users of information, be it is agricultural sector, energy sector. The sector that has been lucky from the beginning of sectors was the aviation and the marine, because we would understand even how the construction of the ship or the aircraft is, for example, what are the flaps of the aircraft are doing when they are de-icing, what condition they can sustain so that you can be able to service them. So we move to concentrate on those two others. And also, for example, what you are doing to also try to assist the community there to understand this language of ours, because our jargon sometimes it is not understood. So we are moving towards now making them understood. Actually, we have been part of the team and organization that and we have led the development of a terminology book where we are trying to translate meteorological terminology and climatological terminology into various languages of South Africa. So the Xhosa, that is my mother tongue, is also included, but we are looking at all the languages. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely informative for most communities sometimes who cannot really relate to English. I think it's better if you speak it in the language that someone understands. So we really hope that it will be able to reach as many people as possible. So my follow-up question is, you did also mention that you do hold a master's degree in meteorology. So how advising people who would like to pursue meteorology and possibly do masters in the future, how can you say that the masters that you currently hold have helped you over the years?
Yeah, no, they have helped a lot because now you've got an insight also to how to research so that you can contribute in improving the skills of the forecasting. So there were more technical masters which were contributing to the forecasting the weather. But the people, they need from the high school to start being passionate about mathematics and physical science, because those are the key subjects. I know some, they would think about geography when they think meteorology. But mathematics and physical science are the compulsory subjects that you must have and could pass. And mathematics is actually the simplest, Kumsa, because people, when they think about this subject, think is difficult. When you do your, I'm trying to use a grade terminology, your mathematics in grade 8, in grade 9, in grade 10, you find that most of the mathematics, even at the tertiary level, is that same mathematics, but now you find that it has been combined. If you would do a isosceles triangle alone, and now all the triangles are combined, and then you must pick up how many of these are the same, for example. But it is basically the same thing. So even if you are not going to do meteorology, more especially mathematics, it tends to help you, even if you are going to be a lawyer, because it sort of bring those analytical skills to the human being. So I would encourage, more especially at high school level, that the students must start prioritizing doing this subject, mathematics and physical science.
Yes. And certainly, Bramix, I think that's where the gap is, because a lot of students across the country are very uninformed, because they assume that once you do geography, you'll be able to branch into meteorology. Because I remember there was a time I went to a science exhibition in Piet Retief, and this bright student came and he spoke to us and he told us that he is currently passing geography with a distinction, but he doesn't have mathematics. So in situations like that, it's very unfortunate, and it's very difficult to advise someone like that who's doing so well with all the other modules, but they lack the core modules of meteorology, which is maths and physical science. So we really hope with this video, it does really get to as many people as possible, that they really do need maths and physical science in order to pursue meteorology. Then I also want to talk about your broadcasting career, Bramix, because I've known you when I was a very, very, very small child, and you were still doing the Xhosa weather on SABC 1. And a lot of people, I think they want to know how they can also be in front of the camera. So my very, very reliable source also told me that you attended some training in Mozambique, I believe, which was media training. So how can you say that training helped you with being a broadcast meteorologist? And how can you advise students or people out there who also want to be Xhosa or whatever language weather presenters out there?
Sibambe ngazibini pha kulisa nama ndibhothise kumakhaya ngamakhaya ngokuhlwa nje njengobona nje namafatha eholele apha kwindawo ezisempuma nakwindawo ezisembindini nakwela lase-Northern Cape nakwela lasempuma koloni imvula seziqalile kaloku ngokuhlwa nje.
Okay, thank you, Kumsa. And I know some, they don't know that I work for South African Weather Service. So I think we need to position the South African Weather Service with time. I'm freelancing at the SABC. But it all started when I was broadcasting for radio stations, national and community radio stations, as early as that 1985, because we would broadcast weather information to the radio stations, be it is in Xhosa or be it's in English. Then that assisted me to be used to broadcast or to talk to media. And then when I got to the television in 2002, by the way, when I started broadcasting, Kumsa, you were not even born that time. So,
not at all.
so you are saying you're still young. When 20 years ago, I started with a television, which it was 2002. So that time, being a mature broadcaster on the radio, and then it was a bit easy for me. I still remember during the audition, Mr. Jesse, who was part of those auditions, said because he was already working in SABC, he said he could see that I'm going to be taken, and then I was taken. So I sort of brought in another approach to presentation, to also try somehow to unpack, the weather systems, that the weather, it doesn't just happen. I can hear sometimes people, they say there was a lightning and the skies were clear. It cannot happen. There has to be that thundercloud. We call it a CB, as you know, but it is called a cumulonimbus. So we need that cloud to have a lightning. If it's clear skies, we can't have a lightning. It doesn't matter how powerful you are in using whatever you are using. But if skies are clear, there will be no lightning. That I can rest people assured. So then with SABC, I tried to influence them to employ as many meteorological and climatological weather presenters as possible. I remember there was Simon Gee at that time that would engage a lot, and then the management of SABC. So hence they started to also consult the South African Weather Service through me to send people for audition. And the simple example that I gave them, Kumsa, was the example of Croatia, where in 2002, they actually laid off all their presenters because they were non-meteorologists and higher meteorologists. So I told them, as the meteorological understanding needs and also more special of the viewers evolve with time, they might be forced to do the same. Hence now they started to bring meteorologists and climatologists. Hence you are there, Kumsa, now also presenting weather at the SABC. You are doing it very, very well, actually, because now I think you make it understandable. While they're looking at you, that you are beautiful, but then you also communicate the information that they can use. Because we can give warnings, Kumsa, but firstly, we must make sure, as a South African Weather Service, they are received on time. But there is that element where now we are starting engaging the users. So when these warnings are received, they must be understood. They must be interpreted correctly so that people can take appropriate actions. You can imagine, you think you are warning people, but how they act, it just leads to the disasters that you were avoiding. And then coming back then to the weather broadcasting, so I also started being used internationally by the World Meteorological Organization and its alliance to be interviewed when I'm in the international meetings, because I was also now serving on bodies of the World Meteorological Organization. So then that led to them identifying me as one of the potential resource persons. So in Mozambique, I was not being trained, but I was also training. But you are always getting training as well when you are with other people that bring another experience. But we're focusing on training other people in weather broadcasting. I had Ms. Powell from BBC and also another lady from CNN, and then a gentleman, Steve Palmer from the UK Met Office. So WMO was more using us as resource people. And then we managed to train 27 countries during 2006. And then I didn't only leave it there. I went around to our regional offices, and then to do the same, I even produced the DVD for that, starting with our managers, our forecasters, and then also I would invite the local media to as part of that training, so that the DJs, when they are going to read weather information, there shouldn't be an accompanying jokes like, oh, we know that the weatherman always lies. I wonder what is it that is going to tell us today. So they must understand that this information is critical for decision making, is critical to reduce disasters, including saving lives. I think you have seen how we've done working with disaster managers, but being proactively, before the tropical cyclone Eloise arrived in Mozambique, being proactively to inform the Northern KZN, the Mpumalanga more especially Ehlanzeni, the potential impact. So we're not going to say now heavy rains. We inform them about the potential impact, which will be the closure of the road, damage to infrastructure, cut off power lines, your Limpopo province. So the response on the ground from the disaster managers, from the municipalities, we have received positive feedback, because now they can act proactively, not to only act when people have lost their lives. So that kind of training is still important, because when you think you are training the community, you are actually also getting trained, because as the community asks you question, respond, you get to know what are their needs, how they use the information, how they interpret the information. So then you go back to your material, to your approach, so that you can provide them with useful information.
Yes, certainly, Bramnix. And with broadcast meteorology, you really did pave the way for us, because now they are starting to see us very useful, because you find that when you are currently doing the weather for the show, they can even ask you to jump in sometimes, and they want you to comment about the weather, and not only just what's currently happening, what's expected to happen. So it really does help to have a broadcast meteorologist who actually knows what's going on and what is expected to happen in the next few days. And I see what we are currently doing at the office now is leaning towards impact-based, as you mentioned just now, about now we're starting to think about all the impacts and the potential impacts that are going to affect those communities. That's how now we are starting to forecast. And hopefully we are going to reach the 53 million now, Bramnix, across the country. We're trying to reach all of those people.
57 million, but then we also need to count those that can be able to hear, because some maybe are still infants at this stage, but it's close to 60 million, and that is quite a number.
Yes. Then let's jump straight to the South African Weather Service. We've only been talking about mostly forecasting and meteorology, but there are also some career opportunities, jobs as well inside the South African Weather Service. So for a student out there who's watching this and wants to go into the South African Weather Service one day, are there any other career opportunities apart from just being an operational forecaster at the desk?
Yes, certainly. Starting with the research, we've got meteorologists that are researchers. You might have started at a tertiary institution doing a BSc degree, for example, with maths and physics. I think if you have physics 1, at least maths 2, but I'm not sure now of those level at the moment. But with your BSc, we can also absorb you. Then you can do meteorological training, and then you become a researcher in atmospheric sciences. And we even have applications now. The people that work on applications on agrometeorology and hydrometeorology that we use not to have. Hence, I said we want to understand the sectors better now. But you can also be a climatologist. So in simple terms, when I explain a climatologist, I say it deals about history of the weather. because climatology is about the long term. You've got historic records in the field of climatology. So these people work together. That's why a climatologist can also be a better weather presenter. I say a better weather presenter because you need to be careful if you don't understand the forecasting when you are being asked additional questions, as you indicated. I know some people, they get tempted to try to answer, and sometimes they are neither meteorologists nor climatologists, and then giving a wrong information. Believe me, some of the users do understand weather information. And then we also have got equality. We are, in addition to maintaining a quality station, we are actually now getting to equality forecasting, which is part of the act that legislates the South African Weather Service. So we do have those specific ones that are focusing on us. But we do appoint engineers as well, because our network, which is the foundation of the National Meteorological Service, be it is your lightning detection network, the weather radar network, so allows us to also appoint engineers. So most of them are readily available. So we do appoint engineers as well. I just wanted to tell the people.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, Bramnix. But before we close off, I'd like to first share my very first encounter with you. I believe it was in 2017. I was a student downstairs, still training to be a forecaster, and you would come to our classroom, and you would just pick the one who looks the most shy in the classroom, and you would ask them about what's currently happening outside and what are we expecting for the next 2 to 3 days. Sometimes you would even go as far as asking us to analyze the shipping chart, bring it to your office, and then explain the analysis to you. It was at that moment where I learned that sometimes teaching is not standing in front of the classroom and writing on the whiteboard. It's sometimes those subtle learnings from people who come in and they show you something about meteorology that you didn't learn. And as much as we go to school and we go to training, there's a lot that we can learn from people who have been in front of us, like the senior forecasters, the seniors of the South African Weather Service. So I can say we really, really learned that from you. And then another thing I also want to mention is you, before the pandemic and this COVID-19, we were full capacity in the offices, and you would come in and you would all hug us and you would greet us individually by our names. And I always said, oh, Bramnix has a soft spot for the forecasting office, until I went downstairs to ICT and I saw you do the exact same thing to everyone there. It was at that moment where I really saw that you really have a big heart and your humility, that you know each and every employee that walks up and down the corridors of the weather service, whether we are at the head office, whether we are at the regional offices or the observation office across the country. You know each and every employee, all the way down from technical service going all the way up to research on the second floor. So we really, really do admire that about you, Bramnix. Thank you very much for your humanity. We have seen it over the years. And a big congratulations on your 35 years of service. And we wish you all the best. May you have another 35 years, hopefully, with us. So we wish you all the best. Don't retire just yet, please.
Okay, thanks, Kumsa. I also appreciate the family of South African Weather Service. It's important that when you work, you build a family, because you spend most of your time, at your institution, and you also appreciate the salary you are getting. We always complain it's not enough. It's not enough, because whatever you do, you are trying to achieve the objectives of this organization that brings a meal in your plate every day. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Mnikeli Ndabambi, the acting CEO of the South African Weather Service. Now, we thank you very much for joining us. And from all of us here at the Climate Exchange, thank you very much for joining us. From all of us, cheers.